Hello.
Hey Lynn, how are you?
Good. So here, I'm glad to have you quietly on the phone. What I'd like to do tonight is start with the Boulder Scramble
Sure.
for the Johnson School and then go on to you. And then I then go back to unexpected tennis. The tennis group wants to speak tonight because they can't get together next week. So,
Okay. Yeah, I'm
okay,
flexible. I'm flexible.
great. Thank you. Really
Yep, no
appreciate
problem.
that. Apart from all that, how are things?
Um, busy, but
Yeah.
I will definitely call you this week to chat.
Okay. I certainly would appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Got so anxious about this meeting. I got in, 10 minutes early. I just walked into my office. Ah, I'm glad the link worked.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello. Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Good. So I think the link on the calendar was valid.
Perfect. Worked perfectly.
Oh, good. All right.
I
Tony,
just got
have
into my office and thought, oh, just jump in and see if it works. And yes.
Yeah,
Great.
excellent.
Thank you.
Tony may have been right. There may have been an extra space at the end which confused it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to remind me the agenda for tonight, so I'll post those proposals.
Right. So there's been a little bit of an adjustment because I heard from the tennis people. They couldn't come next week, so they're coming tonight. So,
Okay,
so we're going to start with the Boulder Scramble.
let's see. Scramble.
That was number 12 on the list.
Number 12. Okay. It is posting. And then
And then next will be housing production, the
housing.
housing application.
Yeah, and that is, where is that?
That's number 4.
Number 4. Yes, it is. Okay, good.
And then number 7 is tennis. And I told them to come in at 7:45.
Okay,
So I want to keep this on track.
okay. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
if we have energy
Yeah.
and time, we
yeah.
will then go on to one of the open space applications.
All right. Well,
And
you tell me which one at the time.
um,
Okay,
I'd
yeah,
like to, I'd go to the Bailey's Hill Phase 3 that was scheduled for tonight. And I
yeah,
I
right. We
see
got,
Trish
right.
here.
Trish, yeah, Trish sent her attachments to make sure that if they weren't already part of the application, we could post them. All right.
Mhm.
Did you update the grid?
No
right.
changes to it.
All right. So
So we can just use that.
I gotta find it and then I can post it. List my notes. Yeah, okay. So where's the rest of it? Hello? Where is it?
The
Oh,
schedule.
no, I see what the problem is. Okay, I was deep in the files. I gotta go back one step. And then it's the
Okay, this is so exciting, Paul. I'm going to actually start the meeting.
yeah.
Off. How much good that would that be? I see big smiles.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. So I'm Lynn Spencer. I'm privileged to be chairman of Nahant's Community Preservation Committee. This is where I'm calling the meeting to order tonight. And with me are members of the committee, Paul Spurn, Nancy Catalmo, Dave Wilson, Jim Dolan, Austin Antrim. Yeah, that's it. Attending, representing the FinCom, we're happy to have Barbara Beatty and Deborah Warren. So, okay. And we have members of the public coming in. We have Trish Aldrich here, Michelle Capano is here, and Tony, is that you, Town Hall?
Well, I'm
Yes.
town hall, but Tony is probably also town hall.
Well,
He's-
he's Town Hall too.
He's the
You're
real,
both-
he's the
He's the
real.
real town. He's
I'll
the real
change.
Town Hall.
I'll change my name.
No,
Now you
you're
can see
fine.
me
You're fine. I can
anyways.
see you. I
No,
can see you.
no. We like you that way, Tony.
All right. Well, we, as a committee, are in the process of reviewing the grant applications that were submitted in January. This is our second session of review. And I would start the meeting by saying, are there minutes to review? And as the person who has been recently writing the minutes, I can say, no, not
Okay,
yet.
there you go.
Um,
All of the minutes that we approved last week have been submitted to the town clerk. Carry
That's
on,
great. Thank you.
carry on.
I also see that Ellen Goldberg has joined us. So we are in full attendance tonight of our committee, which is great. So I was hoping we could jump into some of the reviews that had been scheduled for tonight or slipped from last week to tonight. And so, Tony, one of them was the Boulder Scramble for the Johnson School. Is Kevin with us? I don't see him.
I don't see him on here, and I didn't have the opportunity to speak with him about it this week.
Okay. Well, I'd rather give him the opportunity. So then would you, somehow we need to make sure that he's on board for next week, because next week is our last session of reviews. So between us, we need to make sure that Kevin can make it.
I'll send him a text right now.
Okay, good. Having had a word with Michelle before the meeting formally started, I know she's here and ready to present, to be part of a discussion. So with that, I'd like to move on to the application from the Town of Nahant, the Housing Production Committee, for the Housing Development Location Study. Hey, thank you, Paul. Very nicely done.
I
And
don't
I'd
know if I
like to
got the
give,
right one, do I? No. Yes?
no, you've got tennis.
Which one do I want? Give me a number. It's the first.
Oh, it's not a number. In the chart, it was a number, but the application was simply in a list of the applications.
Yeah, I understand, but we gave them all numbers and we're living by the numbers. That
Oh,
makes
all
it
right,
a whole
fine,
lot
fine.
easier.
Number 4.
Okay, I will find it instantaneously. You see? You see how well those numbers work? Okay.
I'm odd
All
start.
right. There
All
you go.
right. Thank you, Paul. So Michelle, I'd love to recognize you and invite you into the room.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everybody. Tony, do you want me to do the overview or do you want to do the overview? It was your submission.
Well, why don't I start it, and I'll
Okay.
Okay.
I think before we even get started into this application, are the members of the CPC committee fairly familiar with the housing production plan process that has been going on for the last year?
Tony, I have faithfully encouraged members of this committee every meeting to go
Right.
into the town website and review the housing production study.
So if
So
we haven't done it, it's not Lynn's fault.
It's not my fault.
That's okay.
That's
That's
for
okay.
sure.
And I've been privileged to be the community preservation representative on that committee. So yes, but I think it's a fair thing to say. Has
Well,
everyone
well,
had a sense of this?
I mean, long story short, regarding to kind of bring you up to speed is the housing production planning process, and the housing production plan is a document that is being developed right now by the subcommittee formed by the Board of Selectmen with MAPC as the town's consultant. And it's a public process that the subcommittee has ushered through and provided the community basically a stage, a platform to talk about housing in a general form, but also getting into some specific issues. When you think of the housing production plan, and Michelle and I talk about it so often that, you know, if I gloss over something and you want to interrupt me and ask a question, or same with Michelle, either one of us will be happy to just pause and answer whatever question you might have. We started the process by talking to the community about the housing needs of the town. And you might look at Nahant and say, we have plenty of homes in Nahant. We're a very dense community. Our neighborhoods are pretty tight. And, you know, we're almost 95% residential. What we found through this process is that what we lack is variety. We lack alternative opportunity of housing. Some of that, so you're talking about rental properties, ownership properties, little homes, townhomes, condos, apartments, medium-sized homes, large homes. That's, the different types of housing, who they serve, young families, elderly, veterans, low income, middle income, high income. There's a lot of different things that we've looked at over the past year. So we start with what type of housing does the community want to see or wants us to start planning for? And then we look at the affordability requirement. So Chapter 40B requires all towns to have a certain amount of housing under the SHI, which is Michelle, the S stands for
Michelle, are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. I couldn't get myself. It's subsidized housing.
subsidized housing inventory.
Housing.
Sorry, so subsidized housing inventory. Now, subsidized doesn't necessarily mean, that a property or a unit that's being, that the rent or the mortgage is being paid for through public funding sources. It also can mean, a development that, housing development that, offers some affordable units and the rest is market rate. And therefore, the market rate units subsidize the cost of building and offering the affordable units. And essentially, every town has to have 10% of their total housing units dedicated to affordable housing. Not every town has met that threshold. Many, many towns have not. Or you have to meet 1.5% of your general land area that's developable dedicated to affordable housing. In either case, the town of Nahant does not meet that requirement. We calculated how far off we are, what type of affordable housing. We talked a lot about what type of affordable housing we would like to look at, what would kind of fit in with the needs of the town. And we're still going through that process. The other piece of housing in general in this conversation is the future MBTA 3A, MBTA communities section 3A, which requires that all towns that are MBTA communities have a certain size multi-family zone district in their community. We have until the end of next year to figure out how we want to comply with that and present it to a town meeting for a vote. So we looked at in the lens of both 40B and 3A, and keep in mind 40B is directly related to affordability. 3A does not speak about affordability. It just speaks about, it's a zoning requirement, whereas 40B is a development requirement. We talked about how could those overlap with each other in Nahant. And we talked about what are the risks of not complying with these things. And so the largest risk of not being compliant with 40B is that a developer could surpass town zoning if they were to propose an unfriendly 40B development, and the residents in town and the town, capital T town, would have a very hard time having any control over what happens or how big or, the different types of details of that development. And we found through these public conversations that obviously Nahant residents didn't like the idea of that. So We found that the town has needs for a variety of housing. We have 2 requirements put upon us that come with risks if we don't comply with them. And we found that the town of Nahant wants say in how these, how we kind of take on the next steps. The difficult part about the housing production plan process and conversation is that it's a broad topic. It's a general discussion. And where a lot of people get concerned is that we don't have the answers to specifics. We aren't talking about a specific property, although we have identified a number of potential opportunity sites. We don't talk about a number of units per site, how big a development would look like, who actually it would serve, what would it, all those specific details. And that conversation doesn't happen at the housing production plan level. That conversation happens at the next step. And that's what this application is for. This application is to, initiate the next step in the process. And that's to speak about, to look at one or more of the potential opportunity sites or something else, and actually start talking about the specifics of what could this site potentially be developed into, what would the community be okay with, what would they not be okay with, who would it serve, and all of those specific details. It would not, if this application was funded, it would not authorize the town to develop a property. That would still come later. This would just give us the funding to go through the study. And then after the study process, the town, if it wants to, could go to town meeting to ask for the authority to actually move forward on something. So this, funding this application is kind of bridges the gap between the high level general discussion that we're having about housing through the housing production plan process and, actually taking next steps. This would allow us to kind of talk about those specific details on a particular property. And I spoke with a few different, I reached out to a few different little to middle senior and family housing architectural firms. I got information from Davis Square, and I have a few links that I can provide the committee. But if you look them up, you'll see a lot of the projects that they've developed in other communities. I had a long discussion with a particular architect there about what we've heard from the community in Nahant, what we've been talking about in the housing production plan process, and talked about, we're looking, the idea here would be, and obviously the specifics, like I said, are really going to be worked out through a community public process, but generally so that he could provide a quote. He asked me what size of a development would you be thinking about? And what he wanted to know was, are you talking about 25 units, 50 units, 100 units or more? And I told him it'd be more like a 25 unit type of project. Now that doesn't mean it will be 25, it could be 10, it could be 26, but just to give them a general idea. And we talked a lot about, that the town, in the public conversation, there was a lot of comments we received about elderly housing or, aging in place type housing opportunities. So folks in town that might want to downsize, but don't want to leave Nahant, and veteran housing and things of that nature. So that's how I got a lot of the information. That's the type of information I gave him that helped feed into the quote that was prepared for this application.
Thank you, Tony. I'd love to give Michelle an opportunity to add any comments as well before we go into questions from the committee.
Thanks, Lynn, and thanks, Tony. It was a great overview. You know, I've been chairing this housing committee now for a little bit more than a year. It's definitely it's been a learning experience taking on a role like this in the community. There's tremendous amount of passion of residents about housing, and I concur with Tony. Our challenges are really around creating opportunities and inventory of different housing types, so that we can see constant, lack of a better term, turnover of homes that allow, you know, young families to come in, people to downsize, and we support, you know, people of various income levels with housing opportunities. Um, in terms of the housing production plan, uh, I would also say, you know, we've been through an effort over the last now 8 weeks of making revisions, and we will be releasing a second draft. So that will come to light for everybody, and hopefully people will see improvements in that. It will help refine our story for the town. I think, you know, as Tony and I have been solutioning and strategizing about how to best, you know, create the next opportunity for the town around housing, we felt like we really need to have those design guidelines. And I thank Lynn for that, because her contribution on the housing committee has helped spawn the idea. So having another tool in the toolbox and having this available to us will help us as we further refine the opportunity sites to a location, and then really help shape that right story that makes sense for the town. And certainly I think, you know, people are again, tremendous amount of passion, tremendous amount of interest, but having the study done and understanding, okay, what are the metes and bounds for design guidelines? What are the things that we can do with 25 units? How many of them can be subsidized? How many of them can be, you know, identified for veterans, for seniors, for families? But then more importantly, market rate. You know, if there are opportunities to do some type of purchase, you know, with these units, and there's, you know, townhomes or condos, whatever that creativeness comes out of this, I think that's going to really help answer, or more importantly, check the box for a lot of the things that we've seen as part of the housing committee. I think I'll stop there.
Okay, that's great. So committee, now's your chance for questions and comments.
Well, I have a lot to ask about and a lot to say, but I don't want to do it first.
Okay.
It makes it easier for everybody else to follow you.
Yeah, that's
No.
right.
Does anyone have a pressing question
I do.
or comment?
Okay, Ellen.
Hi, this is Ellen. I guess I'm in the background right now, just trying to determine. I guess my very first question is this type of application, is this eligible for CPC funding? Does it meet the requirements? That's what I'm trying to look up the definitions right now.
Well, we categorize it under housing.
Yep.
Yeah.
In order to, you know, have a study done to help us with design guidelines that goes along with the work that we've been doing with the housing production plan in 3A.
Mm-hmm.
And so we feel this is the next phase in the process, because ultimately we finish a housing production plan. We have a strategy document that helps inform the town of what their opportunity sites are. But we really can't go to an opportunity site or create an RFP without informing developers what our design guidelines would be for particular locations.
Mm-hmm.
And so this would give us the opportunity to almost kind of pre-RFP, if you want to think of it that way, all of the requirements that we need for those design guidelines to inform developers, but also, you know, look at a site or sites to say, okay, for these locations, here's what we want to see happen that fits in the neighborhood, right? We don't want to put a, 5-story, 25 unit building in a neighborhood where it doesn't make sense, where there's only single family homes and they're, 30 feet tall.
No, of
Right.
course, I
Thank
completely,
you. I
completely,
think
yeah.
I really appreciate the quick action of Paul and putting this on the screen.
Yes, thank you,
And
Paul.
And Ellen's question, and I would refer us to looking to under the community housing column. I would refer you to creation, to bring into being or cause to exist. So I think to me, the study is part of the effort to bring into being or cause to exist. And I will say that in the past, funding was given for developing design guidelines for the Coast Guard housing property.
Lynn, can I make another comment?
Sure.
So there's a number of opportunity sites that have been discussed as part of the housing production plan. Some of them are owned by the town, some of them are not. Many of the ones that are not, they were included in the plan, not as target properties that the town would actively seek out and try to transform, but more so as potential development sites that if those property owners were to change and consider some sort of transformation to those sites, that we would want to have a seat at the table. So this application and this funding, I think I could confidently say that it would be used for the publicly owned properties, one or more, unless a private property owner approached the town and said, hey, I saw that you got funding for this study. I'd be interested in potentially, transforming my property and I'd like to get involved. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. We haven't been approached by anyone in that like that to this date. So I don't know if something like that would happen. So I think it'd be pretty safe to say that if funded, this would be to explore, those specific details on the publicly owned opportunity sites.
Thank you, Tony. Ellen, did you have any other questions?
Well, just to thank you for clarifying that you would potentially classify it under creation as well. I was looking at support as well as a possibility. I just want to make sure that before we moved any further, we had justification according to the categorization rules.
Right.
So thank
Support.
you.
So
If you're finished, we'll recognize Paul, but
okay.
only if you're finished, Ellen.
Bold move, Lynn.
Thank you.
So I think it's really important that you have put meat on the bones of some proposals to do particular projects. People need to see them, Tony. I think you and Michelle are absolutely right about coming up with concrete things. But I am concerned that by selecting one or two or three projects, that you are constricting the view of this housing committee and what it could present to the town. So I think there's not necessarily a conflict, but important complementarity here. I think somebody needs to be looking, and perhaps if I weren't so ignorant of the town plan, sorry, Lynn, that I'm missing something that's already been done. I would think that going to an architect gets you one kind of result, But going to a planner who can look at this little town of ours from one end to the other and quickly see the open space and the developable and redevelopable property and see it through the lens of these two statutory requirements and give us a relatively wide swath of possibilities, different ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 projects of meeting these goals that we have for ourselves. And remember what our goals are. We're trying to satisfy a wide swath of the community who have aspirations and interests, some self-interest, some wider public interests. And they also have concerns, call them fears, about changing the character of the town in ways that they don't want it to change. They may be right, they may be wrong, you may agree, I may disagree. But there is constituent concern here, okay? So I think that the best way to approach this is to work both comprehensively, looking at the whole picture, getting different possibilities in combination from planners, and then taking a few of those suggestions and then giving them to architects, because architects are going to give you, even if they're not giving you down to the last detail, and of course we're not paying them for that at this stage, but they're still going to be oriented toward the finished product on a particular site. And
So
it's
you know,
important to do that, but I don't want to limit the project to that. I'm sorry, Tony, I cut you off.
I was cutting you off. I'm sorry. You nailed it. But actually, that's what the housing production plan and the 3A planning process is what you just talked about. So it is, that's what MAPC is, a regional planning organization. They're our consultant. And that's what the housing production plan is doing, is looking at it more of a general sense across the community. Where are these potential development opportunity sites? We're pretty close to the end of that process, but we still have a little bit more to go. And that was funded with the previous CPC funding.
Right.
So we took that step on the 40B and the general, discussion of what the town's housing needs are and where do we fall short related to 40B. Also in that plan, we introduced section 3A, which is the zoning requirement for multifamily. That we received a grant from the state, and that process comes next. So if this is funded, I don't think we would initiate this process until after the 3A planning process is completed.
Yeah.
Because that's another big topic of public discussion. How are we, and in both cases, whether you're talking about affordability under 40B or you're talking about multifamily zoning under 3A, we've heard that same concern or fear. And I know in all the conversations that the subcommittee had, and Michelle can speak to it, but I attended all those meetings as well. Always in the mind of everybody in those conversations was, how do we make progress without negatively affecting the characteristic of our community? And so change is generally scary. And I think a lot of that fear at this point, the planning level stage, is because we don't have those specifics to discuss yet. So this is really, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Lynn.
I'm sorry. I joined the chorus here. I think you're absolutely right. Putting things in front of people that are specific to several sites that are actually have real potential in, I won't say the immediate future, but the foreseeable future, I think will help the whole overall discussion. So, and I'm going to actually just jump in here because I am concerned about time. This is a topic that could take our whole meeting. So I do want to actually let people on the committee ask any further questions.
It may be the largest topic, you know, should this be approved by you and added to the warrant, it may be one of the larger topics that are discussed at town meeting this year. It's an important one.
And to that end, maybe you could tell us the current draft of the housing production plan, which Michelle mentioned has had a number of revisions or tuning up in the last 8 weeks. Could you tell us when that may be reviewed by the planning board and the board of selectmen? I think the idea was that there was going to be a joint review session on that.
Michelle, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll take it. So we just finalized all the last set of revisions. We sent it to MAPC. We're waiting for them to review it and get back to us so we can set up hopefully a short working session just to go through some of the more substantive changes. And then immediately following that, there will be a meeting of the housing committee to review and adopt the changes. We may need to vote on some of the changes. So I have to make a determination on the more substantive ones. But then afterwards, we're going to publish that second draft and provide a 2-week comment period for the residents to review. And then following, our hope is by the end of March, have that joint meeting of the planning board and the board of selectmen so they can review it. I will say one comment though, as I also sit on the planning board. The planning board has raised that they would also like to have a separate dedicated meeting and invite select members of the public to also participate in their planning board discussion as they do a page turn of the next version of the housing production plan. So don't want to speak in a vacuum just on my committee. They have an interest as well.
Okay.
Tony, how many sites do you think could be dealt with for this funding?
This we'd have to pick one. We'd probably have to narrow it down to one, to be honest, with the $50,000.
60, yeah.
$60,000. Yeah, we'd probably have to narrow it down to one site. But we have Michelle, sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
How many of the opportunity sites are publicly owned?
Oh,
4 or 5?
10 sites.
Yeah,
a little bit
Greystone
more
Road.
than that, because we have several of the public housing sites that we were looking to modernize as well in some way. So we can get very creative with a firm around the design guidelines. If we already know the square footage of what we're dealing with, right? And if we're thoughtful about the vision that we want to see, because we don't want to cluster all of, a subsidized housing or affordable housing in one location. If there's an opportunity that we can create buying opportunities for folks with townhomes or condos in some of the other locations with a developer that can help, if a developer takes, say, for an example, pie in the sky idea, they take on 3 pieces of town-owned land. One is going to be modernized for middle to income housing to own. Others would be used to leverage as increased rental for subsidized housing. So working with an architect to come up with design guidelines that fit within the neighborhood, right? We never want to, my greatest fear is having a project and a building that just doesn't fit, right? We see that. We've seen that with many people who update their homes, and you look at them and say, why did you do that? It doesn't fit in the neighborhood, right? Everyone's taste, right? It all comes to taste and what they want, right? But for our town, I think we're a little bit more discriminating to say we want to fit with the character of the neighborhood. So basically, you want to drive by and not even know that that's subsidized housing. You would never know looking at it, right?
Right.
That kind of thinking.
But I
Thank you,
want to,
Michelle.
so just to add to what Michelle was just saying, right now the only affordable housing, meaning units of living that are in perpetuity dedicated for 80% median income or less, are those properties owned by Nahant Housing Authority.
Mhm.
The Nahant Housing Authority has not said whether they want, to be a part of this future planning or not. They have not said whether they want additional units to manage. In fact, they've raised concerns about their existing properties being featured in the plan as opportunity sites. So I don't, I want to be clear that like I don't want to come off and I don't want to make it sound like we're pushing for more NHA property, ran and owned by Nahant Housing Authority. This could be completely separate from the housing authority. And I think that's an important piece. I think that's an important piece to talk about. I just want to make sure that we're not, I don't want it to sound like we're pushing a certain thing, pushing them to be involved. If they wanted to be involved, if this grant was funded and they said, hey, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to, look at one of our properties and see how we could maybe, improve upon it or be a part of this process, we would welcome that in a heartbeat. But that hasn't been the case so far.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. I'm sure there's other questions and comments. I see a hand raised. Nancy. Nancy, I know
Nancy,
you're
you're
trying to get
muted.
off. You're off.
You're
need to
muted,
be-
dear.
You're muted.
Sorry. This is a grant for 60,000 and there's 53,000 in the housing reserve. Would this be in addition to that, or would we be using part of that money?
Well, just remember, there's money that's generated from this year's community preservation funding. So, this year's 10% of our predicted income needs to be dedicated to for housing. Our predicted income is $446,000. So the first 10% of that $44,000 would be the first draw for funding this, and the balance would come from the general reserve. Thank you. Who just put that? That came from
Yeah, that
Austin.
came from Austin. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm just going to save it and then I'll get right back to it. Sorry. I'm very sorry about
But
that.
I'm not sure, Paul, that I've completely given Nancy a chance to finish her
Yes, no,
question.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So what is the housing? So I understand we have to take 40,000 or whatever, but what is that housing reserve money for?
Well, that's sitting in reserve, so that can be called upon to fund the balance of this study, which would be about, $17,000 or whatever it is, $23,000. Otherwise, just sits and waits for a creative and perceptive grant application.
Nancy, it's Michelle. So the one thing I would ask the committee to think about is, while that money is still set aside in the housing account for CPC, I would ask not to draw down on that. And the reason I say that is we have some strategies and goals in our housing plan to create a housing trust. And my hope is at some opportunity, we can use that as seed money to help create a housing trust that can later help kick off some of these larger activities for a future development. So I just want to make sure that folks were aware of that. You may have not seen that in the housing plan if you've read it, but it's one of our important goals to come back to CPC at a later time and help, operationalize that housing trust.
So that is one of those possible creative draws on the housing reserve, or the 70% of what would be left over once we've given the 10% for each of the allowable CPC funding activities.
Thank
I
you.
have to thank you, Nancy. I'm going to ask for other questions or comments. I think we will be having our friends from Nahant Ennis waiting. I told them they could come in at 7:45. But this is an important topic. There is no question about it. I don't think we're finished with this tonight, but any pressing questions or comments before we go on to the next topic? Tony and Michelle, don't go away. We'd like to be able to return to you, but we have spent about 40 minutes on this right now. Let's take a little bit of a break and go to the folks from Nahant first. What's it called? I've got to be very clear about this. Nahant First in Tennis, 1874. Thank you, Paul, for putting this on the screen. I think we have with us tonight Peter Focal. I think we were also going to see Karen Follett. Well, regardless, I'd like to recognize Peter Focal. And Peter, if you want to go off mute and join us, we'd be very happy for that.
You're still on mute, Peter.
Hey,
You're with us now.
okay, so you can hear me loud and clear?
Absolutely.
We certainly
All
can.
right.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for entertaining our presentation this evening. I know this is a little bit on last motion here. And so let me start off by saying that the motivation for this proposal and for this event that we're planning is the fact that tennis was first played in the United States in 1874, and lo and behold, it was played for the first time ever on Swallows Cave Road on a grassy layout there where the Appleton Estate used to be. And so we would like to make use of this opportunity to create a joyful event for the whole town, which would bring in young and old and raise the profile of tennis in town as a recreational activity for everyone, and also to highlight the usefulness of the Nahant Country Club property for recreational events, in this case, a recreational event with historical significance. So, so that's the why we're here with you, and the sketch of what exactly we've planned. And when I say we, I mean a committee that's been at work since last October. We have about 10 members from the Nahant tennis community and also from the Historical Society. And what we're envisioning is, first of all, it would be on July 13th, Saturday. And it would consist of a casual tournament in the morning, played in Victorian dress. If you can imagine me in Victorian dress, that's worth the price of admission in itself, with wooden rackets. That should be interesting. And then a lunch on the country club lawn, and a talk by a tennis celebrity that we've managed to convince that he should join us in this celebration. It's Tim Mayotte, who is from Massachusetts, probably the most important Massachusetts born player in our lifetime. He was the NCAA singles champion at Stanford and a former world top 10 player. And then finally, we would have an exhibition double. So we would have a talk by him, and then we would have an exhibition doubles match between Tim and some top Nahant juniors. So that should get the junior community involved. Now, other possible participants that we're discussing with are the Victorian reenactors of the Greater Boston Vintage Society, accompanied by a Nahant musical group playing historically appropriate live music. So it's been suggested that the Victorian reenactors may not just show up, but they may actually do some historically appropriate dancing too. So anyway, the overall, we were very excited about this event. We think that it could be a great focus for the summer for many people. And the budget is pretty modest.
Thank you, sir.
We hope it isn't too modest.
Is it or did I finish it?
What's that?
Sorry, Peter.
Sorry about that, Peter.
Are
We
we
should-
still there?
Yeah, I should be
The rest
muted.
of us
I'm sorry.
yes, it would be helpful. The rest of us are riveted. Go ahead, please.
Okay, all right. You mean Paul's not riveted?
I think he is. Now he's screwed back in. He's screwed back in right
All
now.
right, okay. So I won't drag you through the pennies and dollars of every one of our budget items, but basically we're looking at coverage for trophies. Our expenses overall are going to consist of trophies and balls and somewhat a modest management fee for someone to run the tournament, rental of chairs and tables from the new Nahant country, whatever it's called now, Yasmin's operation, box lunch for a few honored guests, bagels and coffee, porta potty, fee for tennis celebrity Tim Mayotte, and the total will come to $3,500. That's the total. That's the total budget. The donation that we've been told that we can expect from the tennis club, is $1,000, and we will have some participant fees in excess of the $25 charge that we'll be making for box lunches. So about $300 from that. And then we're going out for sponsorships and donations from local area businesses that do business with the tennis club in particular. So the total for the income is about $1,820. And we're coming to the CPC with a request for $1,880. So that's pretty much our story. And if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Paul, late this afternoon, Peter had forwarded a further supplement to the grant application that I just emailed to you. And Paul, if you're able to put that up on the screen, I think it might be helpful. I also appreciate, you can pull that up. It doesn't have to be there right now. I appreciate what was just put up, and that is one of the things we do need to look at here is whether this is an allowable project per the CPC guidelines. So there's some things to unpack here.
I also just wanted to chime in. I joined and Peter was kind of on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt, but
Oh,
Paul, I
okay.
know you and I think we've met before, but I'm Andrea Goglis. I'm the president of the Nahant Tennis Club. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you guys for this opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. And
Thank
I
you.
did see Karen Fallett as well. So there we go.
Okay, great.
The trio.
Then I think that might be a little bit beyond my skill level. I'm gonna try, but meanwhile, I'm leaving it on the original proposal.
Okay. Well, if you're continuing to try on that, you had on your screen the
I
allowable cost.
can't free my screen. That's my problem. Sorry. And I
Okay.
keep clogging it up with this browser and my email. So I don't
Okay.
want to cover up what's much more interesting. I can't do what I want to do.
Okay. I think a question here, because this is an event and we're being asked to help join in what sounds like an exciting and lovely and appropriate historical recreation. The question is this an allowable cost, an allowable project per community preservation guidelines? And that's where we're a little bit stuck with our technology right now because we can't pull up that schedule again that you had
No.
so beautifully.
Yeah, well, I can pull up the other thing, but I can't.
Yeah,
Sorry.
pull up the other thing.
Here it is. That I can keep up forever. But once
No,
I put up my browser, it crowds it out. Sorry. I don't know why, but it does.
Well, Paul, if you get rid of the display of the proposal, does
Yes,
that
Yeah.
help you bring up the
Yeah.
other one?
no. I'm afraid, well, I mean, this is what you're looking for. It won't do a damn thing. You hear that?
Yeah,
You don't hear
so-
the
so-
bell
Yeah, I
ringing
hear.
in the background.
So Paul,
know why.
what I was hoping for,
Frozen.
I know I just, okay, it's frozen. I wonder if you could turn over the running of this to, say, Ellen.
I would love to. Ellen, it's yours.
Ellen, do you remember how beautifully last time you just sort of, we did a little bit of, I think it was like a tennis match. We just sort of batted it
funny.
across the ball to you.
So what do you want me to pull up? I can, what would you like?
That schedule of allowable costs, the
I
same
am,
thing.
I am
Oh,
looking for it.
that I can put up. Sure, no
So
problem
that's what I
there.
was asking for, Paul. Yes,
There
that.
it is. Bada bing,
that-
bada bang.
Okay, fine.
You said a
Phew.
schedule. All right, I
Yeah.
see it as a grid. Okay, fine. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Language.
Just language, that's all.
So you've applied for this under historic resources and recreation.
Correct.
Those are the two categories that we're looking at here. And maybe if you could go down a little bit, Paul, to the support one.
There it is.
Okay.
And let's see, we don't need community well, we do need recreation. Okay.
We need recreation and historic resources. So
Okay.
those
are the two.
right.
All right. And
Now you've just enlarged it so we can.
well, I can do a go back. That's fine.
Yeah,
No
please take it back. Yeah, please just
There it is.
let's
There it
just sit for a moment and look at this together and say, where does this fall?
And we display the top so we can see the captions.
Yeah,
there we go.
it's the second and the fourth column.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, second and third, isn't it? Recreation.
If you count here, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4,
Oh, I
5
see.
columns.
Okay. All right.
Second
All
and
right.
second and the fourth.
Yep.
Here and here. And
Mhm.
notice there's a big gray
There's a
box.
big blank. This, if all the sort of collective brains looking at this here right now are not seeing something that jumps out and that says bingo. I think this may have to be referred to the coalition. That would be my suggestion, is to
Mhm.
have a shout out to Stuart Saganor and say, yeah, tell us if this would work and what precedents we might have in, the hundreds and hundreds of grants that have been given statewide for a project like this.
I see. So the coalition is something beyond your purview?
No, the coalition is the umbrella organization for community preservation. You can have a lot of fun taking a look at the Community Preservation Coalition website, and you'll see listed there, you can gain access to every grant that has been given statewide in every program. So that's why I'm saying, you know what, I think I'd be looking for, you know, a place where we've got some precedents for this. Because in our experience in Nahant, we have not funded an event. You know, we've funded lots of different things, but not strictly an event. Although this is this kind of bridge between, you know, the historic and the recreation.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, given the amount of attention that's been focused on preserving the country club property and the building, that an event of this sort that focuses attention on just those very aspects, the historical aspect of the property and its recreational use, might truly be in the gray area where you might be able to fund it. But I'll leave that. That's certainly a decision that you have to make.
So we'll sort of do some research on this, but let me ask for comments or questions from other members of the committee.
Gene, I have a question, just more from a guidance standpoint. You know, I don't understand, you know, what you guys, you know, the side of you that you guys work on that determines what gets granted, whatever. What advice would you give us in terms of how we presented this? Is there anything else that we should be highlighting that might help our request?
I actually felt the piece that was sent to me at the end of the day today would have been an important part of the grant application. It just gave more specificity in terms of what was happening and the breakdown of the budget. Now, this may be, Andrea, part of the, you know, we have a new application. We have an application that has the standard questions, but in a different format that we've had in the past. And perhaps, and I can see right now some things that we need to tweak on that application. That application was worked on by Ellen Goldberg and Nancy Catalmo, along with Tony and the website developer. And they're just things that, especially when it comes to budget breakdowns and where's the budget, how was the budget derived, that could be better. But I will be forwarding this one-page piece that I got later today to the committee at large. We'll add it to the application stream. I think, but a fundamental question right now is, does this meet our community preservation guidelines? And that is a statutory matter that's set up by the legislature. It's got a whole lot of specific stuff that we need to adhere to.
Lynn, can I offer an idea too?
Sure, love it.
I don't know, Andrea, Peter, if you guys spoke with the Cultural Council at all. But they might be, you know, that might be the right avenue. That could be a backup plan for you if it's not eligible through CPC. The Cultural Council, you know, maybe a committee that they also get funding for, you know, specifically events of this nature. So that might be a group to reach out to.
That's a perfect
Great
idea,
idea,
Tony.
Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can you tell me who the contact is there?
Peggy Curran would be, I could connect you with her.
That'd be
Okay,
great.
great. Debbie Curran?
Peggy.
Peggy. All right.
And you know, Tony, we've had interest from the local media, be it an item, Channel 5, Boston Magazine, things like that. So people that are in the tennis community or people that are historical minded, you know, have reached out. They're aware of this. You know, there's certain anchor women, men that play tennis that said, "Hey, I'd like to come. Are you guys doing a celebrity type of thing or any kind of pro-am or exhibition?" So we've had a lot of good interest. as we started to kind of put this together, but we're still, you know, obviously in the building the foundation and like Peter said, putting the budget together and finding what the possibilities are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, other comments or questions from the committee or the members of the public who are listening in? Okay.
Okay. Well, Lynn, thank you very much and the committee. And we will try the Cultural Council. And we'll also look forward to hearing back from you whether by any chance it might in fact fit under the guidelines of this coalition that you described.
Thank you,
We'll be in
Peter.
touch with you. Very
Okay,
good.
thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thanks
Thank
so
you for
much.
your time.
Thanks for
All right,
joining
bye-bye
us.
now.
Bye now.
And let's make sure that we all attend this. I think it's going to be great fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Very good.
Bye.
So I thought I had seen Kevin join us. Kevin, are you there? I'm calling for I think it's Kevin Andrews, the principal of the Johnson School. No. Okay. All right. Well, we'll push that forward to next week. So I think I'd next like to invite Trish and Tony to talk with us about the proposal for the Bailey's Hill Master Plan. And Trish, I'm inviting you as the chairman of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. You have been busy, and that's been terrific.
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to get things started here. So I don't forget later, I want to sort of applaud the committee for everything you're handling, the breadth and the depth of all the various projects. It's a little bit mind-boggling. I've just been sitting here for an hour and it's like, wow. But okay. So to talk about it, Bailey's Hill, this is basically a phase 3 project. The CPC has funded work there to date, and this is just taking it to the next step. As we've discussed before, we're proposing to continue work to restore and enhance the Fort Ruckman section of Bailey's Hill. I hope, as indicated in the proposal, they're basically, in my mind, sort of 3 parts to this. The first part would be creating a management plan. We would be building on the model that was used at Lodge Park to write a management plan to guide all the efforts there. And now we're proposing hiring a land management planning and professional firm to develop a management plan for this part of Bailey's Hill. So that would be the first item on the scope of work. The second part would be tackling some of the invasive plants that are doing so well there at Bailey's Hill. Lots of invasive species in the understory and with some of the trees as well. So we did request a proposal from a company that we've worked with before, Parterre Ecological. Yeah, here, and they propose, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distracted by all this jumping around, but basically using a forestry mower to go in and munch up some of the invasive plants in the understory. They would go through first and mark what plants should be kept and what should go out, and then use their big forestry mower to go through and munch up the invasive plants. And as it the machine works. It also mulches the material that it chews up, so leaves that mulch back on the ground.
Doesn't it leave seeds with it?
Seeds. No, you would do it early enough in the season. Hopefully there wouldn't be seeds,
Okay.
or not too many of them. You're right. There are always some, but let's see. And we're proposing starting with the area. So Zach put in that new trail that sort of goes across the side of the hill.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yep. And that would be.
At least I've been on it. Anyone else? Yeah.
So if you go in the Tri-Mountain Road entrance, and there on this map where it says Bass Point Road.
This is Bass Point Road.
Yeah, but over it right there. So it goes along there and then up that little dotted line, basically over to where the trail, the Heritage Trail now goes up. Okay, that's excellent work with your little arrow. And then go back over to the left again. Do you know where the trail is? No, the new trail that Zach put in.
Nope, no
It's
idea.
lower on the hillside. It's lower on the bottom of the hill there. Back over to
It
the.
looks like it says Nahant is
That's the Heritage Trail, but it goes back over near the entrance at Tri-Mountain Road, basically.
Yeah, drop your cursor down to just beyond where the words start. Just
Or
go
where
south.
the L is in Bailey's Hill, the big brown L. Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
basically it goes
That's a good
along
place.
there.
It cuts a diagonal up through through the slope.
Yeah.
And actually somebody with a compound fracture last spring was able to walk it. So it's a good slope. It's well done. And I can see that
Yeah.
you've started to put some improvements in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we would begin by tackling that area, and the forestry mower would munch up some of the invasive plants in the understory in that area, beginning there. Okay, so tackle the invasive plants is the second item in the scope of work. And the third would be then establishing native plants, so native plant restoration.
so that it would be self-sustaining, more or less.
Yes, eventually, after a while, yes. But going forward, it would. Yes, exactly, Paul. So the proposal that we received from Parterre Ecological, who we have worked with before at Bailey's Hill, they're the ones that, well, Zach did a bunch of the work in the DPW, but the Parterre Ecological people planted the new native plants in that other section at Bailey's Hill. So we and Zach and the DPW have all worked positively and productively before on this site.
Okay, can you hold right there, Paul? Stop scrolling a second because this
Yeah.
is
I'm
saying
trying to
something
find where
important.
she's talking.
Yeah, I know, but I want this. So
So
this shows the division of the financials, and I think that's important. Could you address that, Trish?
yes, so the first item on the scope of work is that $5,689 figure to develop a land management plan.
Yep.
Okay, that happens first. Then the next thing that would happen in the, well, it says here 2024 spring initial forestry mowing, tree pruning, and initial invasive plant management. So that's when they would go in with their forestry mower and munch up a bunch of the invasive plants. That could happen later. It doesn't have to be in the spring of 2024. It probably would be later, but that would happen soon in the project. So that's a total of $34,775. You need to go back in and hit the invasive shrubs and saplings and plants again, because invasive plants are very good at reestablishing themselves. You can't just, if anyone knows from their own backyard, you can't just tackle them once. You have to come back a number of times. So those repeat visits and continued management is built in here. So that's at $6,300. Can you keep going down, Paul, please?
Yep, great.
Again, coming back in the fall for further treatment.
Okay, so that all adds up to 47,350.
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, and then we go to a new item, which is native plant restoration.
Correct. Which again happens in waves, basically, but there'd be a big chunk there proposed in the fall of 2024 for $20,000. And then we get into the list of plants that they're proposing. I should maybe just back up a second here. And when they develop the management plan for us, they will present it to us, but then also engage in dialogue with us. We like this, we don't like that. What about this? So again, if there were particular plants that they suggest that maybe we don't think would work, there'd be some dialogue back and forth and modification. Some funds for project management. So
Okay.
can we go to the Excel spreadsheet there you had at one point, Paul? Yeah, okay. So Parterre Ecological presented this over 3 years because based on their experience managing many properties throughout New England, that's what they found is the time horizon that makes the most sense to really be effective and make a dent in things. It puts the land and us really in the strongest position to think of it over 3 years. But I realize that might not fit in with your time scale or the funds that are available now. So there is ability to manage this a little bit and shift things around in terms of the timing.
Mhm.
Okay, so I took the proposal, which I hope I attached successfully in the application. But I broke it down this way into year 1, year 2, and year 3 expenses by categories. So in their proposal for year 1, the total subtotal there shown there would be $73,904. We also propose including a sign to inform residents of the ecological conditions and challenges at the site for $200. So that's a total of 74. We put in contingency of 10% because pretty sure you folks have suggested that's a good idea and things
Mhm.
can, change. So you need a little something built in there. Paul, can you scroll down a little bit further, please? And we did. Okay, so that's a subtotal in year 1 of 81,514. Nahant Swim, we asked them if they would support this project, and they very kindly and generously said yes, and they will contribute $3,000. So that means our request for CPC grant would be $78,500 in year 1.
Mhm.
And then you can see there's a figure for year 2. I'm not sure. Well, and then over in the very right hand last thing, it says 118,000. That would be the total for year 1 and 2 only. I'm not sure all these figures really rolled up correctly into the beautiful online grant form. So that's partly why I'm going over it now.
I will say that there is a little bit of a difference because I have the online form on my other screen over here, and in that case, the first year total was being requested was $91,367, with $3,000 coming in from other sources. So that would have been a $94,000 project.
Yeah, if that's my error, I'm sorry. I did the best I could.
Well,
But
but
these
this
are-
is better because it's a
Yeah.
little bit less. If it was a lot more, Trish, we'd be like, oh, this is not so good. But no, this is, you know, this is why we're doing this, is that we
Yeah.
can actually get the refinement and understanding we need. So no,
Yes.
thank you for this. Thank you.
So this is actually what we were thinking, is the 78,514 for year one.
Okay. Okay. Whew. Well, let you take a deep breath and let other committee members at this point come in with their questions and comments.
Trish, this is for establishing something and getting it rolling. Am I right?
Yes, I think so. I mean, Bailey's Hill has been, you know, somewhat neglected for decades. So it's
Sure.
not going to be remedied and fixed in
Now,
a year or two.
what is it going to need on our part to sustain it? Are we making assumptions about the love and attention that the Town Public Works Committee is going to shower on this site? Are those reasonable expectations?
Ah,
I think you mean the Public Works Department, Paul,
Yeah.
not the
Did I s-
committee.
Oh, no, the department.
Yeah.
for sure.
let's see, that's a good question. With using the work that has already been done and the native plants that were, you know, fairly recently planted. DPW did go in and water them in the beginning to keep them going as needed, you know. I mean, when it rained, they didn't water, but otherwise they did go in and water, which was critical. You can't just put them in the ground and leave them alone. So there would be some work along those lines initially. In other words, in the first, I don't know, maybe 2 years. There also is a little problem with these rabbits that we seem to have quite a few of them, and they seem to be quite hungry. So that's another thing we have already discussed with the parterre ecological people and with Zach, that really we need to get some exclosures up to try to keep the rabbits out.
You know, because the wonderful work that's been done over there was done as a project that DPW accepted.
Yes.
In fact, you know, the bit was in their teeth. And if anything, Nancy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you know, there was a need for interested parties to step up and say, well, we can do this better together, this way, that way, another way. And the result was wonderful. But DPW is initially motivated by a lot of enthusiasm. I don't know that is this going to be as high on their agenda? Tony, maybe you have an insight into that.
Just 1 second, Tony,
Yeah.
and then Zach is 100% behind this. I've spoken
Yeah.
to him about
Yeah.
it,
Good.
and he's 100% behind this project.
Good.
Yeah, sorry, Tony.
No, that sounds good.
Lynn?
Okay. Yes,
Lynn?
Dave. Yeah,
Hey, listen,
love to hear from you.
yes, years ago, we used to maintain that because we had a lot more help now. Now we're down 2 employees down there. I don't know if this is gonna be their high priority on maintaining this. That's my question. You know, you gotta have a machine come in here and take it all down. I know what the machine is, what it's like. That's a lot of work. And after it's all done, you're gonna have to maintain it. So that's my question is, what, you know, you might need some outside help to help you maintain this. I don't think the DPW at this point could handle the whole thing.
Okay.
I wonder if we need some volunteer clippers
Yeah.
every
Are you
time.
volunteering, Lynn?
Well, yes, I've been over there a lot, quite honestly. If
Well,
you
that
could
would-
get the bittersweet down to a manageable level, quite honestly, yeah, I'd clip it.
Yeah. That can be addressed in the management plan as it's being developed. I mean, how would
Yeah.
this be maintained over time? Who would do what type of resources are needed?
I think that's a good point. I, for one, love the idea of the management plan, an overriding plan. And I think this is it's a modest investment overall, it's under $6,000 to sort of set those standards. Michelle, recognizing you.
Thank you. I was going to just comment about the management plan. If there's a way that you can factor in the community groups that do environmental restoration. Certainly, Boy Scouts are always looking for projects for their Eagles. Girl Scouts have their awards as well. Swim, I know Swim takes care of the beaches, but someone who may not wants to change it up and have an event there to help with cleaning up annually, like in the spring and the fall, might be something else to consider in your management plan.
Yeah.
But I would also check with local universities for their environmental programs to see if there's something there as well that they can get students to come into town.
It's a good thought.
I'd just like to agree very much with what Michelle said. We've talked about Friends of Lodge Park, Friends of Bailey's Hill, and I think that we could maybe get together groups of interested parties who might live in the area or work together and with the DPW be given areas that we might work on and be taught how to do things. So I think we could partner with the DPW in positive ways to help them get this taken care of, because we don't want to let it go back to what we're fighting now by not maintaining it.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up, Nancy, because I do remember, and I think Karen Fallett, who was on earlier, there was a group that was doing various kind of volunteer improvements down there. And so it would be great to sort of foster neighborhood or community involvement. But yes, there should be a training aspect to it. So, Michelle, you have your hand up again.
Oh,
did it-
sorry, I forgot to take it
Oh,
down.
did it not go down? Okay, that's what I thought maybe. So Dave, you made a great comment. Who else from the committee or the public? Okay. Well, Trish, thank you very much for a very thoughtful and clear application.
Thank you.
Committee members, it's just about 8:30. Do you have the stamina for one more review tonight?
We don't do it now, we got to do it later.
Exactly. So while we're at Bailey's Hill, I wondered if we could talk about the gazebo. And for that, I would be turning to Tony, representing the town of Nahant. Is he still there?
Yes.
Okay. Tony, Paul, if you'd be kind enough in terms of the applications.
It's done.
There it is. Great. Perfect. Thanks, Paul. So Bailey's Hill Gazebo. What do we got here, Tony?
It's pretty straightforward. There's some items at the gazebo that need to be repaired or need to be improved. Things like sections of the roof, railing, paint. It's really just an application to try to restore it, at a surface level. The gazebo is still really sound structurally. It's in good shape. It just needs some improvements to the roof and some of the lattice work that is around the upper side, the higher end, hanging kind of from the roof line.
Okay, thanks.
So I went out there with Wayne, our building inspector. We took a look at it, and you know, he came up with the estimate based on, you know, current costs of materials and estimate on, you know, how long it would take to do some of the work.
Thank you.
Lynn, by my recollection, we've permitted this kind of work by the application of preservation criteria to historic resources. Am I right about that?
We have, and in fact, community preservation funded the work on this building practically in the first round of grant
Oh, yeah.
making in 2005.
Yeah.
And so this is a building that was that was constructed by the Women's Club, or under the aegis of the Women's Club, as part of the bicentennial in 1976. Community preservation gave money in 2005, $18,000 for, you know, major maintenance and repairs. And here we are 18 years later at it again. So a question here is this work the result of deferred maintenance? In other words, if the structure had been continually maintained, would we be looking at these proposed repairs? And if it falls under maintenance, we don't do maintenance. Austin, you've been very quiet tonight. You continually sort of push things along in front of us. I know you're thinking all the time.
I'm just trying to get caught up tonight, Lynn.
Okay.
But in terms of the gazebo, I think if the roof is at a point where it's leaking, that's certainly a little more than maintenance needed. I think I would support some funding to stabilize that structure.
I think the thing I'm trying to say, so yes, it could be that we got a roof project now that is sort of looming up, but it is very important that the town undertake maintenance on, you know, routine, you know, maintenance, keeping the paint coatings go up to speed and that sort of thing on these structures, because not doing so then creates, you know, a major repair requirement.
I have a question.
Sure thing. Alan.
So I'm looking at a flow chart right now that says, you know, what are qualifying historic projects for CPA funding from the coalition? I guess my question is, because it says if you're using it for preservation of a historic resource, rehabilitation, restoration, those are eligible. So what is the difference between preservation, rehab, and restoration versus maintenance in this situation if we were trying to determine eligibility?
Do you see what's on the screen? So according to their definitions, which are a little bit different than the ones I live, which was the Secretary of the Interior standards, here preservation would be, protect personal or real property from injury, harm, or destruction. Rehabilitation, going down to the last category, is, you know, a little bit amped up, where you're making capital improvements or what are called extraordinary repairs. In either case, a roof is part of preserving or an extraordinary repair.
Yes, I would agree with that. Whereas it's
So
not just putting a coat of paint on, which is maintenance.
Right. And so we have seen what happens when people don't keep the paint coating up, and then we get into wood repairs or so on. And, that's another thing. Did Wayne give you a breakdown of the costs? I have to say, I don't think I saw it as part of the application, Tony. Maybe.
He did, but I don't know. I may not have described that. It wasn't a document that I would have added to the application, but I thought I took the information and included it in the application. But I may not have done that.
This is Ellen and Nancy. This is one of the things that we are seeing with this application. It says, under estimated cost and schedule, and then it goes down to say attach cost estimates for construction projects and state how the costs were derived. And a lot of the time that isn't being addressed here with this application. So I don't know how we could make it,
Make it required.
make it really work.
Make it a required upload that people would have to.
Yeah.
I'm keeping notes on our conversations, and one of them is for the budget. Maybe we just don't have a particular template. People can upload their budget themselves, but they have to upload a budget.
Yeah.
And that would take away the confusing financial forms, the form fields on the application. And if people just, they can do a spreadsheet saying, it's paint, it's maintenance, it's whatever the line items are. Your people are generally smart enough to write them down and put numbers next to them rather than fill in a form that doesn't seem to work real well.
Yep. I hear you.
And generally, I don't think people understand the stipend request.
Yeah.
Part
I don't think we do either.
I don't think I think somehow we should actually think about taking it out myself, but that's another cost discussion.
Yeah,
I'm going to add that to my document.
Yeah, please do, Ellen, please do. So I think what I'd like to sort of ask any more questions on the gazebo application. What I would ask you to do, Tony, is to please provide us with the budget breakdown.
I'll find that and send it to you guys.
Okay. So for tonight, I'd like to sort of draw this meeting to an end. We have more work to do next week. And so next week will be the rest of the story. So that would be the Boulder Scramble, the beach access, Gary Dines, and, again, sort of returning to some of these other sort of applications for further discussion. And I suspect the housing production application is one that we'll probably be referring to. Oh, excuse me. I just realized the Goddard Drive is the other one, Tony. The Goddard Drive, a Heritage Trail connection. Okay. So to repeat, Boulder Scramble, Gary Dines, beach access, Goddard Drive, Heritage Trail connection.
And have you reached out to all of those applicants to ask them to be here next week?
I had reached out to everybody in an email giving a schedule 2 weeks ago, but now I'm going to do it again. Let me see what else. That meeting will be the 19th. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. At 7 o'clock.
Right. That is, I think that is what is that, President's Day? I know that my kids have off next week, next Monday. Is it next Monday? Yes. Our office is closed on Monday. I don't know if it's President's Day weekend right? So that's President's Day. Is everybody going to be around?
I am. Anyone else? going to be missing? We're going to have a quorum?
Yeah,
I'll be there.
Dave? Jim?
I'm 50-50. I'm gonna have to check with the boss. I know that we're
Okay.
away next week.
Okay. Okay, Jim, thank you.
I'll be around.
Okay, great. Looks like we should have a quorum. We do need to keep driving this along, folks, because the biggest part of what we have to do then is to sort of look at, all these useful and helpful grant applications. And then the amount of money that we have to spend. And we had applications that were over $1 million, $1.2 million, and we have $448,000 to spend. So we're going to have to be strategic.
Lynn, you also have the packet to update. Do you want me to ask Allison to redline that with, current figures? And then provide it to you guys, and if you guys want to make other changes from there, would that be easier?
So are you referring to past grants and the status of past grants and whether we have
Yeah,
perhaps
remember we made
clawback opportunities?
No, I wasn't referring to that, but that is something else that we need to put together for you. I was referring to the yellow book that we put together last year. Your CPC history.
Yeah.
That I imagine we're going to put another one of those. You're going to want to put another one of those out again this year.
Right. I would, but I wouldn't actually do that until we actually make our recommendations to the town meeting.
Right. No, I know. I was just to help you get started. You were talking about all the different things that you guys have on your to-do list, and
Yeah.
we could start redlining that for you, put up-to-date figures in there, and then hand it off to you guys to put the finishing touches on later on.
Boy, that would be wonderful. I have to say, Allison took a huge load off my shoulders last year by doing that with the past accounting. So folks, what we're talking about are the status of the grants and how much has been spent and how much is pending in the various grant categories. So yes, that would be a wonderful thing. Allison and Sheila were also able to give me the amount of the 3% surcharge, which is how we derived the amount of money that we think we have to spend, which is specifically $446,068. So that would be good to get that started. Sure, Tony. Barbara or Deborah from FinCom, do you have anything you want to share with us tonight about your schedule and doings and expectations from us?
My sense is that, well, not my sense, we're meeting hopefully this Thursday to get ourselves organized in terms of the dates for, warrant, booklet, printing, mailing, etc. So obviously, as in the past, the sooner you can get things to us, the better. But we are not, right now at least, in a big crunch. But it's, always as we get closer to our deadlines, and I don't know if I have it right now. I have the final deadlines for the book. Would it be helpful for me to give those to you?
Sure thing, if you got them, yes.
Let me look, hang on.
Are you referring to the budget schedule, Barbara?
Yeah, actually you have that, Tony, right?
Yep.
And I've got it here also.
You guys are.
Yeah, we have to get the
Your book, the FinCom book is going to the printer by Friday, April 19th.
Correct. I've got it here. Yep.
So, ideally, I think you guys also put recommendations together on the CPC articles, don't you?
Yes,
Yes, we
do.
do.
Yep.
So our recommendations would go to FinCom. So we need to have consultative meetings with FinCom.
Yes,
Yeah.
we always do that. Right.
Yep. And then we usually have a sort of session with the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, so we're gonna, as Tony just said, our, final deadline is Friday, April 19th. So we're going to be setting up a schedule for when we would meet with you and then
Mhm.
do the final votes on everything.
Yep.
So obviously better, earlier better, but it looks like you're in pretty good shape now, don't you think?
Well, we're driving at it.
I like the
We're
word driving. Driving is good. Driving is good.
We're driving at it, Barbara, but yeah.
Yes. Keep
Okay.
Wait till the money's on the table, Barbara.
Yeah, that's right.
Then the fur will fly.
Yeah. Yep.
I think
All
getting
right.
getting CPC getting their articles to the FinCom in March at
Yeah.
some point rather than
Yeah.
in April would be
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
we're trying to do this in March so we can actually have a little less crunch time.
Thank you very much. That's would be excellent.
Less Sherm, less drawn.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Although I love opera, but that's all right. All right. Well, folks, with that, unless there's any new business, I will be looking for that telling motion.
I move we adjourn.
Okay. Second,
Second, Nancy.
thank you. Roll call. Paul,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Ellen,
I.
Austin,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thanks, folks. Off we go rejoicing.
Ellen,
Thank
stay
you.
on for just a minute. I want to ask your advice about something.
All right, I'm
I
going
don't know
home.
if it's gonna do it again, but
good night.
Good night, everybody.
yeah, good night, everyone. Sorry to horn in on this. So I
That's
had
all right. We're still being recorded. So
right. It's all right.
what's your
So
question?
I had my browser on and I could not get it to go small so I could move it off the field of view like this. It
Yep.
just kept going ding ding, which means don't bother me. I'm not moving.
Yeah, it's almost like you had another object that was in the way that you
Yeah,
weren't.
yeah.
Right.
And I don't know, how would I look for it without just disturbing everybody so much that they wished I would stop?
Well, it would be hard for you to do while you're sharing your screen.
Yeah, right. So that's the first thing I should do is shut off my share.
You would have to stop your screen share. Now,
And have someone else share their screen. That's possible, right?
right. So what I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at a fully maximized browser. Minimize it.
All right,
First,
that's
yeah,
maximized.
no, yeah, that's not what I want. I want that one. Minimize.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What I had to do was I had to open up Task Manager and close the item.
What was it?
It was the Chrome browser.
I see.
So I found Chrome browser here and I ended it. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only way I could get it to go away.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There probably was some sort of a very small notation on one of the tabs. The way
Yes.
some tabs have a speaker if there's audio.
Yes.
There was probably something up
There
there.
was some notification and you just couldn't see it, and then it's a really troubling thing to have to share your screen when you're having an issue. So I feel your
Right.
pain because there's not much you can do. What are you gonna do? You're gonna just flip all around, right?
Yeah, I don't know what to do. All right, well, I think probably this, what I need to be sure of is that I can switch the share function to another member of the meeting.
You can usually, you should be able to do that as the town hall, as if you're logging in as town hall,
Yeah,
then you have the power to do that.
yeah. All right. Well, let's see. So if I go to share, it doesn't make it clear. I guess somebody else would have to, why don't you go to share and see if you have the option of sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen right now.
All right, so evidently that was something I could have done. All right,
Yeah.
that's good to know in the future. All right, thank you very much for the tutorial.
Okay. You're welcome.
Good night.
Night.